This is the end, beautiful friend. This is the end, my only friend. The end of our elaborate plans. The end of everything that stands. The end, no safety or surprise. The end, I'll never look into your eyes again. Can you picture what will be so limitless and free? Desperately in need of some stranger's hand in a desperate land. Lost in a romance, wilderness of pain, and all the children are insane. All the children are insane. Waiting for the summer rain, There's danger on the edge of town. Ride the King's Highway, weird scenes inside the gold mine. Ride the highway west, baby. Ride the snake, ride the snake to the lake, the ancient lake, baby. The snake is long, 7 miles. Ride the snake. He's old and his skin is cold. The West is the best. The West is the best. Get here and we'll do the rest. The blue bus is calling us. is calling us. Driver, where you taking us? The killer awoke before dawn. He put his boots on. He took a face from the ancient gallery and he walked on down the hall. He went into the room where his sister lived, and then he paid a visit to his brother, and then he walked on down the hall, and he came to a door, and he looked inside. Father, yes, son, I want to kill you. Mother, I want to. Come on, baby, take a chance with us. Come on, baby, take a chance with us. Come on, baby, take a chance with us and meet me at the back of the blue bus. Do not blue rock on that blue bus.
So today will be our last class. Nobody seemed interested enough to post that they wanted to see something extra. So since we're already not doing anything on Friday, I'll just go ahead and call it. And I like to do this mini course retrospective at the end. It's not really going to be complete because, of course, the grades aren't in, but at the end of the course, after Friday of Dead Week, I will post another retrospective on Campus Wire with all those stats. But a retrospective is something that where you stand up and you say what went well, what didn't go so well, and what can be improved for the future. Those three things. And I like to do a course retrospective, but it also comes from industry. So this entire time, what you've been doing is, Scrum development, where everything is broken up into sprints. We've talked about sprints before. Usually a sprint is about 4 weeks. At the beginning of the sprint, a self-managed team of software developers looks at what tasks need to be done for that sprint. And it's a whole backlog of tasks that needs to be done. But they only estimate, okay, well, we can do these 5 things in the next 4 weeks. We're going to commit to that. And then throughout the sprint, that's all they do, right? They don't look, they don't have a manager coming in and saying, drop everything. I need you to do this crisis now, or I need you to do that, or something like that. The whole point of Scrum is to protect you from mismanagement like that, and to give your team the self-managing skills and the agency to self-manage. But at the end of that, what you do is you say, okay, well, did we get everything that we committed to done? Right? What went well? What didn't go so well this sprint? And what could we do to improve on the future? Right? And so there's always a commitment at the beginning of a sprint. You work, and then at the end of the sprint, before you commit to the next sprint, you have a retrospective. Right? That helps you identify any problems, like, well, that person committed to this thing and they really didn't do anything. How are we going to improve that? Well, we committed to this and not understanding how easy or hard it was, because you have also this thing called a burn down chart, and it's supposed to be this nice linear amount of work. Here's all the work that we have to start with, and then every day it goes down the same amount. You don't want to have it so that it all drops down and you go to 0. Right, because then that means that you sorely overestimated the time that it would take to do everything. Right, you don't want it to go where it's we're not getting anything done, and then we have to cram right at the last minute. Right, you want it to not be nice and steady, because nobody works well in a crisis, and nobody works well if they're just sitting there twiddling their thumbs. Right. That's why I left my last job, by the way. I was twiddling my thumbs for the last 3 months or so. It wasn't my fault. There was just nothing to do, literally, right? It's been over 12 years, so I don't care if they hear that on my YouTube channel or not. But anyway, your retrospective is going to come in the form of the course evaluation. This is your opportunity to tell me what went well, what didn't go so well, and anything that can be improved for in the future, right? It opens next week, I think. They haven't told me anything yet. This is the same end-of-year course evaluations that's through Canvas that everybody has. So I don't have any information on how many people have filled it out yet. But if 75%, we reach a threshold of 75%, I will give everybody 20-point bonus. So encourage each other to fill it out. Don't just fill it out to fill it out. I guess you can do that if you want. It is anonymous. I'll never know. But be thoughtful about it, right? So in this class, I think we've got 18 enrolled. So 75% of 18 would be 12. If at least 12 of you fill it out, I'll give everybody, even if you didn't fill it out, 20 bonus points. And that's because I'll never know who filled it out, because it is truly anonymous, all right? Don't identify yourself in there either, right? But otherwise, please give me your feedback. What have you done this semester? What are the lessons learned, skills acquired, achievements unlocked, whatever you want to call it, right? So hopefully you've gotten some more soft skills, or you at least you had exposure to more soft skills. Teamwork, especially if you teamed up with somebody. If you didn't team up with somebody, you still had to improve those soft skills because you were working with a TA at some point, a learning assistant at some point. You were, a team of one. There's still some teamwork to be said for that. Not so much in this section, but maybe you had to deal with conflict resolution. In the main section, people deal with it all the time. A partner that's not doing anything, that's just mooching or not showing up to meetings or whatever. Eventually, you have to say, enough is enough. These are my expectations, and if these expectations aren't fulfilled, this is how we're going to move forward. And I'm not going to be your partner anymore, right? So it's good. The only way that you can really learn this stuff, you can learn techniques to deal with conflict resolution, but the only way to actually learn it is to apply those techniques, right? So if you've only ever had positive experiences, fine, great. You haven't had conflict resolution yet, but eventually you will, right? Because unfortunately, you can't, in an industry, if you're in a job, you can't walk away from a partnership, right? You can't fire somebody. So you will eventually have to learn how to deal with somebody, right? Eventually. You've learned how to better coordinate things, right? You've better learned how to plan things, organize yourself, and hopefully time management. And this is, of course, over the last full year as well. right? We try to give you tools to do this, our Gantt chart, but hopefully at some point you've reached the point where time management is no longer an issue, that you know how you work and how well and what works for you and what doesn't work for you. Your toolbox has increased, right? Now you've got a third programming language. You've got Java and C, and now you have Python. In fact, now you have SQL as well. That is a full programming language. You have exposure to, and familiarity, I should say. We have these levels: exposure, familiarity, and expertise, right? But you definitely have familiarity with object-oriented programming, SQL, and hopefully you've improved your Git skills as well. If you are working in a pair and you're still not using Git, get with the program, right? If you're working alone and you're not using Git, get with the program. This is an inescapable tool that you will need to use for the rest of your career. And by the way, I mean, it's not just a tool for your career. I use it daily for my personal stuff. I store everything I can on Git in either public repos or private repos. I haven't, here. I mean, it can be as trivial as the following. Here's how can I search my own repos? Repos, I don't know where it is, but baseball. Right. Nope, scorecard. There we go. I don't know why baseball didn't come up for baseball scorecard, but so be it. Did I misspell baseball? Right? I don't know. Anyway, I was sick of bad scorecards in baseball, so I made my own. Right? I designed my own and made my own, and I put it on GitHub so that I could go to the printers and get it printed out without having to take a thumbnail drive. Right? That's not even the best one. The best one was right here with the color. I made it all nice and colory. Right? So there's my baseball scorecard, and then I printed out on cardstock paper for the ones I care about. Right? You might not score. Nobody watches baseball, much less scores baseball. Right? Anyway, personal projects, right? Personal stuff can be put on Git, and I mean, once you learn it, it's a skill that will pay dividends in your personal lives as well. Hopefully, you have experience and perspective building a larger project. The project that you built is still not a huge, complex project, but it is more complex than maybe what you did in CS1 or certainly before that. And finally, you have exposure to technical writing, and I'm happy to report that the LAs, at least in this section, have reported almost across the board excellent improvements and excellent writing skills throughout. Remember, when we brought in the guest from the Writing Center, we identified writing as one of the fundamental skills that is completely lacking in a lot of applicants, right? I mean, if you can put together a coherent, cover letter, right? That is free of slang or free of typos or anything like that, right? That's probably putting you head and shoulders above 90% of the applicants out there. It's certainly putting you head and shoulders above most Americans, because I think that 70% of Americans read at below a 6th grade level, right? Means that they write at below a 6th grade level, right? And I am fortunate and privileged enough not to witness that kind of low education in my daily life, but believe me, it's out there, right? Okay. Better understanding of technical debt, right? We call this, sometimes we call this eating your own dog food. If you had a bad design in one phase, you were fighting that design or trying to redesign it in another phase. Technical debt is where you are taking out a loan on your future time because you do it really quickly just to get it done. May or may not work, but it's not well designed. That means in the future, it's brittle, it will eventually break, or it will prevent you from doing something properly, in which case you've got to go back and pay that loan back along with interest. Right? That's why it's called technical debt. It's a loan on your time. Right? Bad practices, hopefully they've become apparent why they're bad practices. Right? Design as an afterthought rather than design first. Right? If you just invest a little bit of time, that's the opposite of technical debt. If you invest your time up front in good design, right, then it'll pay you dividends later on. Right? It'll pay you interest instead of you paying the bank interest. Usage of good test cases, test suites, good code coverage, etc. This is usually a bad habit that's broken in CS1, hopefully, but we still see it commonly in CS2 and above, and even in daily life. but poor variable names. Hopefully you understand why they're poor variable names, because then you start to confuse yourself. I had one incident several years ago where somebody was just rubber duck debugging with me, and I knew what the problem was right away. And I pointed out they had this control variable on their while loop, right? A sensible one would be while not done or something like that, right? And they put while x, and so I said, well, what is x? Well, it's the variable that is controlling my while loop here. I go, yeah, but what does it stand for, right? Well, why you haven't found that thing, or while there's still another element, right? Something descriptive like that, and they had flipped it, right? They just needed to put a negation in front of it, right? Because it was a complete non-variable name non-descriptive variable name. YAGNIs, right? Hopefully you don't over-engineer things. Don't get caught up on, well, this may happen, or we may want to use it like this 20 years in the future, right? Design things well, but design them for what you've got on your plate right then and there, not for what you might have in the future, because then you end up over-designing. There's a classical example of enterprise level FizzBuzz. It's a joke, right? Do you remember FizzBuzz? Right? You print fizz or buzz, depending on if it's divisible by 3 or 4, right? There we go. Enterprise Edition FizzBuzz is a no-nonsense implementation of FizzBuzz. Well, it's got everything under the sun thrown in just to do FizzBuzz, right? I think it's probably got hundreds of different, yeah, here we go. It's got dozens and dozens of different classes just to do FizzBuzz, right? It's a joke, right? They're over-engineering this thing intentionally to show you that, nope, you can do a factory, and then you can do loops, and then you can go ahead and separate that out into math, arithmetics, et cetera, right? So don't over-engineer things, right? Because that's bad design too, right? There's another classic example. What was it? It was in the JavaScript node pad left pad manager, left pad, I think it was. Yeah. One developer broke Node, Babel, and thousands of other things, right? So there's a whole story here, but basically it comes down to you just needed to pad out a string on the left with like 5 spaces or something. And of course, we need a library to do that for us, right? And there's this library called left pad that did it for you. And so these thousands and thousands of projects imported this. Well, at some point, the guy decides he doesn't want to do it anymore. He's got all these nonsense, small little functions that do trivial things that should be a one-liner in your code. And he decides he didn't want to do it anymore, so he removes the package. Guess what? Everything broke because that package was removed, right? I'm sure that there's a little bit more than this, but you're left padding out a string with a character of a certain length, right? Do you really need a library function to do something like that? And by the way, that's not even the best way of doing it. So over-engineered stuff, overly dependent stuff is really brittle. You can break thousands and thousands of libraries just with one line change, right? Okay. Hopefully you have a better appreciation for the scope of a larger project, working in coordinating teams, et cetera, et cetera. You're better coders overall, better designers overall because of the last year that you've gone through. Right? Again, this is not true for this section, and it usually never is true for the honors section, but the impediments that a lot of people face are never really getting started, right? So I can tell you right now that 80% of those that are going to fail in the main section are because they didn't even turn in assignment 0, right? That they never got started, and who knows why that is. They didn't care about the course. They really didn't get the skills that they thought they got in CS1 or whatever. But that's 80%, right? The others are procrastination, and to try to help with that, we try to give you that Gantt chart that spreads out the work, makes it an even paced work on each one of those sprints. We split it up for you into that agile, like usually when you're doing agile development, Scrum development, you decide as a team that we're going to do this during this phase. We did that for you because we had to organize the project, right? But otherwise, when you get to senior design, hopefully you're going to that on Friday, They use Agile and Scrum development. They can tell you all about it, their sprints, because they have 6 sprints throughout the whole year, right? And those are 4 weeks or so, right? 3 and 3 in the spring and fall, right? Design comes first, right? They'll tell you over there that, well, no, we spent the first couple of sprints designing everything before we actually implemented something. They might have implemented something that was proof of concept or something, like rapid prototyping, but at the end of the day, that was just part of the design. The design those prototypes simply reinform the design, right? Bad or insufficient testing, right? The most common one being just relying on the grader to do all your testing for you, never even running it locally, right? And instead, the grader is fine, but it's a black box tester. We call it black box because you can't look into the box to see what it's doing, right? That's our responsibility. But we do output the CSV files so that you can take a look and see what the data is, et cetera, et cetera. But of course, one change that we made this year, I'm sort of happy with it, is we took that one phase where you're doing the actual inheritance hierarchy, and we split it up into 2 phases, and then we added additional work over here where you actually we were forced to do JUnit testing. And our thinking was not that, no, we're going to force you to learn JUnit testing, right? Hopefully you were doing that anyway. Instead, the idea was hopefully we're going to force you to have a good inheritance hierarchy, because here's the tests that you need to do, right? If you can't do those tests, you don't have a good design, right? So go back and fix your design so that you can actually do the tests. And like I said, it was a mixed bag. We still had a lot of bad design, mostly out of the main section, but hopefully you understand that testing is part of the process as well. Remember that at the beginning of the semester, I shared these skills objectives for you. These are the outcomes of this course. By the end of this course, you should be able to more easily pick up and learn a new programming language on your own. How many folks are planning on doing that over the summer? Learn C# is what I would suggest next, because especially here in Lincoln, there are a lot of .NET houses, so C# would be good. We use that in the VR course because we use Unity, and Unity game engine uses C#. It's just Microsoft Java, by the way. It's very, very Java-like, right? You should be able to recognize and use and design and appreciate programs with an object-oriented flavor. You should be able to design a database-backed application from scratch given a general problem statement, because you've done that now. You should be able to understand and implement new basic data structures, as well as recognize how and when to leverage the appropriate data structures. Right? You know that if you're going to be doing binary search, you know that no, linked lists are out because that's inefficient. You know that if you just need insertion and removal of the minimum or maximal element, a heap is what you want to bring, right? You should be able to recognize, no, I need that data structure is not going to work because it's not general purpose or whatever, right? It's not going to work for this application. You should be able to identify and analyze basic algorithms, right? Big O analysis, basically. Remember the theme of this course, a couple of themes, but one of them is smart data structures and dumb code works a lot better than the other way around. That's the actual quote. I always just say are a lot better than the other way around. But that's from Eric S. Raymond. Who wrote this book called The Cathedral and the Bazaar, which is a nice read. You should probably read it at some point. There are lots of books on software development philosophy, and this is one of them. And the philosophy is where do good ideas come from? Do they come from the learned few in the cathedral disseminating that information down, or do they come from the bazaar, right? The common folks that come to a consensus. So in other words, is it best to go with experts, or is it best to go with consensus from a lot of people? And generally, you prefer the consensus from a lot of people because more eyes is always better, right? Those folks hanging out in their cathedral, make them part of the bazaar, and you're getting their eyes and looks too, right? That's why open source software. I saw a great meme the other day. There's an elephant standing on a ball, and then at the very bottom were the ants. And so there's everybody, the world, the 99% of consumers. The ball was open source software, and then at the very bottom were the ants holding it up. They were the open source software developers, right? And it's absolutely true because Atlas, right? The Atlas shrugged that you have a few people that that the entire world's software depends on, right? All right, so I mean, I should find that meme. I should have kept it, but it's programming humor on a subreddit on Reddit. By the end of this course, you should be able to approach a reasonably complex problem and ask these design questions first. What entities or objects would be appropriate to model this problem, right? That was the first phase, right? Design these objects before they even interact with something, right? With each other. How would these objects interact to solve the problem? Then you brought that together in phase 2. What data structures would be the most appropriate or efficient to use? And hopefully that was throughout the process. A map was your friend for a lot of this stuff, right? Because you want to look up an invoice using a UUID. A map is perfect for that, right? Now you want to look up an invoice based on its primary key in your database. Another map, right? Some other way of doing that. The big takeaway from this course is that you may, some people didn't have any problems, but you may have done some or a lot of things poorly, but next time you will do better, right? So having done one project, the next project is going to be easier. Having done 2 or 3 projects, the 4th project is going to be super, super easy, right? It's always that way of things, right? Once you get a lot more experience, then looking back at what you like, the first program you did in CS1, right? You could probably crack that out in like 2 minutes now, right? Or maybe even a minute, right? You can do a Hello World program in your sleep. Right? Other takeaways are the realization that whether or not you consider yourself a computer scientist, computer engineer, software engineer, data science now, and robotics in a year, right? We actually have robotics major coming online this fall, and but the first official cohort already started this last year. Right? I don't know who they are. Anybody robotics? No? Okay. Anyway, they would have taken CS1 and they would have taken 155E, but I would not have been able to identify them because we didn't have it in the records yet. So, in any case, any one of you, whatever you consider yourself to be, you actually have to be a lawyer, right? You have to be a philosopher, a diplomat, a manager, a designer, creator, writer, thinker, and programmer. I put that last, right? Let's start at the top. Why do you have to be? The only ordered one here is the last one, programmer. Not necessarily you have to be most importantly a lawyer. The world has enough lawyers as it is. So why do you have to be a lawyer? Can I use this software? Right? This open source software? Was it released under a Creative Commons license that says I can't profit from it? Right? Just last year, maybe it was 2 years ago now, right? I had this other course where they would do JavaScript projects, and I think it's taken down by now, but they would do these JavaScript visualization projects, and one of the students had used this image. Right? Have you ever heard of copyright trolls? Right? So open source images, if you do not attribute them exactly the way that you should, these trolls come in and say, nope, that's a violation. We're trying to collect $500 on behalf of the copyright owner, right? And so they contacted our sysadmins, and our sysadmins, I'm not going to say who it was, but foolishly replied to them and said, well, we're sorry about this. We're taking it down immediately. A lawyer would have a field day with that because you've just admitted guilt, right? So, no, what you should have done is you should have been enough of a lawyer to know that you're not a lawyer, to refer to shut your mouth up and then give it to a real lawyer, right? And that's what eventually happened. And of course, they told him to go F off because we don't do that, right? So they got rid of the copyright trolls. But that initial admission of guilt, that could have been the end right there, where you are now forced to, right? In fact, there's a great video. Shut the F up Friday, right? Watch that video. That's a sufficient amount of lawyering that you will ever need in your life. Shut up. Don't say a thing, right? Get a real lawyer, right? But of course, you also need to be a lawyer to understand if you're ever going to be like a private contractor, right? You don't have a job, you contract with companies. A lawyer is your best friend because they can write up the contract. They can make it legally binding. They can go after the company if they decide not to pay, right? So a lawyer, from that perspective, is worth their weight in gold, right? There's another great video that I share in CS1. Did anybody watch it? There's one of the last videos. It's not by it's by a design firm, like a graphic design firm. It's the video is "F you, pay me," right? And he goes through the process of hiring a lawyer and why you need a lawyer, because oh, we didn't like the design, we're not going to pay. F you, pay me, lawyer up, right? So you need to be enough of a lawyer to know when you need a lawyer, right? You need to be a philosopher, right? Because you need to think about how code works and how code should work, right? You need to be a diplomat because you need to talk to people. You need to communicate. You need to deal with difficult people at some point in your life. You need to do that conflict resolution, right? By the way, I've been doing this for at least 15 years, this course retrospective, and only now has the College of Engineering caught up. You've probably been familiarized with it, the complete engineer, right? This is really the complete engineer right here, right? You need to be all of these things. You need to be managers because you need to manage yourself. Even if you end up having a manager and you don't call all the shots, you still call all of your shots, right? And you need to be a manager in your daily life, right? What I share with students at not new student enrollment, but something like that, is a quote that I saw one time where when you go to college, you should sleep more than you study more than you party, and then maximize your party time, right? So that's how you should manage yourself. In other words, you shouldn't cut out that party, right? If it's video games, it's whatever you do for leisure. I just read. So make sure that you are managing your time so that you allocate that time. I'm going to play video games for 5 hours today, right? But that's okay because I've also scheduled my work during this time and this other thing during that time, right? Stick to it, right? You have to be a designer, obviously. You have to be a creator because you do have to be creative. You have to be a writer because you're writing not just code, you are writing documentation. You are writing design documents like you're doing here, right? And of course, you have to think about all of that, right? I put programmer last because, and I love these memes. There's another meme. In fact, I think I have this one, right? I'll just share it with you here. Go to my iDrive, fun, and it's all about lines of code. Okay, well where big brain locks. All right, hopefully it opens. There we go. All right, so when you're starting out, dumb, right? You write 2 lines of code per hour. And you become more skilled and you write 45 lines of code per hour. Then you're more thoughtful about it and you only write 2 lines of code that did those 45 lines. Then you're super brain about it and no, you're removing the cruft, right? At that point, you are removing other people's mistakes, right? And so as you progress in your career, you'll become less and less of a programmer and more of a planner, a designer, right? And then you can just knock that out with a few lines of code, right? By the way, ChatGPT or AI doesn't change any of this stuff, right? Mostly because for anything that comes out of an LLM to be usable, you have to be able to discern whether or not it's usable. And only if you have these skills, right, maybe on this side of the curve at least, can you see that the code coming out of it is crap or no, that'll work. Or like in engineering, is it good or is it good enough, right? And it might just be good enough. But you have to discern that. You have to know it, know what's coming out of there is good or not, right? These are the stats from last year. I'll just go to ours here. Far fewer enrolled this year, but these were the stats last year. I won't have stats this year until we have everything, but otherwise 90% ABC. I think in here everybody has, I think it's going to end up being 95 ABC, AB. It's going to be bumped up because you are going to be redoing that assignment if you donked one up, right? And so those will go up. But you can also see the main section here also like half enrollment this year. It went down. But you can see that this is a historic thing. About 75% pass and about 25% don't or so in a CS2. And by the way, if you're interested in a CS1, it's even worse. It's about 1/3 fail CS1. So the attrition by the end of the year is going to be about 50%. So know that you're not in an elite class, I wouldn't say, but you are definitely above the median for everybody having finished CS2. Okay. But otherwise, again, these are basically invariant over the years. Remember that you still have your assignment 6 and 7. 6 is due this Friday, 7 is due next Friday. You don't have a week in between. The design document is due that Friday of dead week. And of course, you also have this post-course survey. That is not the course evaluation, right? That is the course survey in Canvas that asks you, what are your familiarity with PDC and a couple of other things. That is worth, I think, 15 or 20 points, so make sure that you're finishing it. I will send reminders about it. But otherwise, remember that there are no exams here at all. There's no final exam. So when we conclude today, that's the end of lecture. When you conclude your lab today, that's the end of lab. And when you conclude your assignments on the 9th, that's the end of the course. Right? What do you do after that? Right? So at UNL, most of you are taking 235 right now, but some of you might have held off on it. Traditionally, computer engineers might held off on it because they're doing a bunch of electrical engineering, right? But you'll eventually take that. And then, of course, now you can also take 310. I think 310 may require this as a co-requisite. I don't remember. It's basically a continuation. You've done computer science 1, you've done computer science 2, now it's computer science 3. The official name, I think, is data structures and algorithms. But it's a CS3, right? Okay. Professional. Look for those internships. We don't have any job fairs left over, but check out Bits and Bytes because there have been some internships announced there. There's certainly been LA's openings and UTA openings. That's undergraduate teaching assistants and then the learning assistants, which are going to be the folks that you've worked with this semester. Aditya, Emmanuel, and Matthew have been your LAs. So if you nominated them, great. We'll hear from the awards people next week or so. Learn a new language. Build a new project over the summer, right? Don't let your summer go to waste. That's one of my main regrets when I was an undergrad. I delivered pizzas or something, right? Find an internship. And if you don't find an internship, at least keep up on your skills because they do wither if you don't use them, right? Stay in touch with the School of Computing. Bits and Bytes will be published bi-weekly, I think, every other week. I don't know how, that's not bi-weekly. Yeah, it's bi-weekly. And so you'll find announcements in there. I can't recommend this anymore because it's been dead. So instead I would recommend to keep in touch with the UNL Coding Club instead. They are quite active, right? So UNL Coding Club there, and so that it's on officially here where it, oh wait, no, it's, where's welcome and rules? No, they put it in resources, there it is, right? There's your QR code to join the Discord for the UNL Coding Club. The other one that I was referring to was the Student Advisory Board, and it's deader than dead. It's been overtaken by trolls, not trolls, but spam. So I can't recommend that one anymore. Instead, you should go and check out the UNL Coding Club is the official club, right? All right. Otherwise, thank you, right? Thanks to all the students who helped on CampusWire. If you answered questions for others, great. Thank you for all the learning assistants and course leaders, and make sure to thank them if you see them, or just thank them, in passing or whatever. Thank you to you for everybody who took this course, and have a great summer. Any questions or issues or comments? Okay. Well then, might see you in the future, right?